Hello and welcome to the new XNA series. This one will be a little bit different. We are not going to briefly introduce you to C# like in the other series. We're going to go straight into gaming. And for this tutorial we're going to do a little introduction. And for next tutorial, depending on how much time has passed, but we will... Hey, how are you? Nathan here from PHStudios and welcome back to another networking tutorial. Last tutorial, we discussed the spawn pool and incorporated that into our game and how to use that. And then we also incorporated a way to reuse bullets, mark them as inactive whenever they go past the top or bottom sides of the screen. And there were a few issues that I mentioned and talked a little bit about. Hey, Nathan here from PHStudios and welcome back to a PHStudios special kind of thing. And what I'm going to do in this tutorial, if you can call it a tutorial, is kind of go over the tools that I use and kind of tips that if you're ever interested in creating tutorials or you currently are creating tutorials, some of these might help you. And I just had a lot of questions about what programs do I use, or do you have any tips for me? I'm trying to create my own tutorials kind of thing. So I think this video will benefit some of you that are interested in creating tutorials. Alright, so the two videos I showed you at the very beginning, the first one was one of the first videos that I recorded and kept on YouTube. There were a few other tutorials that I created, but they were much worse than that one compared to now. And I just deleted those off YouTube and off my website and never to be seen again. The reason I showed you those two videos is because you can tell quite a bit of difference between both the audio quality and the introduction quality. Some of the tutorials I've done in the past, it was like I was reading in a book and I was doing a monotone voice. Like disconnected is equal to 0, connected is equal to 1, player moved is equal to 2, just monotone voice, this is what you need to do, and that sort of thing. The second video, I introduced the video in a nice, upbeat, enthusiastic manner, and I think that's one of the biggest issues I encountered with the series. Well, my tutorials as a whole, as my progression. I was still a newbie when I did the paddles tutorial, and I learned from most of my mistakes, and I still have a few mistakes, but hopefully I'll learn from those too. So that's one of the biggest tips, that if I find a tutorial that I'm interested in, but the person's speaking in a monotone voice like he's reading off a piece of paper, I don't really want to watch that tutorial, even if I'm really interested in the topic. So that if you're ever interested in creating a tutorial, what I did in the past was rehearse. I did the tutorial about 4 times, then the 5th time, give or take a few, was the actual tutorial run, the actual tutorial I would have released. So I did the tutorial a lot of times. But now, today, I can just go ahead and click record, and I can just talk, and I know what to say, what not to say, and get the point across, and that sort of thing. So I would rehearse. I'd write down what you want to say. If you're doing a Photoshop tutorial or After Effects tutorial, I'd write down some of the settings, because that way, if you wanted to get the exact look, you might want to write down these settings. I did that in my After Effects tutorial, the hyperspace one. I wrote down my settings, because if those of you that have used After Effects or Photoshop or something like that sort of thing, if you have 1 or 2 settings a little bit different, that's okay. But when you have all the settings different, you could possibly create a completely different effect. Whether it's better or worse, I don't know. So that's why I write down the particles per second is 10, and then I'll do that in the tutorial or something like that. So that's the number one biggest thing that I have accomplished, is to rehearse get to the point where I don't need to rehearse. Sometimes I do, sometimes I stop the video and start over. And just start rehearsing until you get to that good tutorial mindset, and then you can pretty much stop rehearsing. Like, you can just click the record button and go. I do that on some of my videos. The After Effects ones and Photoshop ones and GarageBand ones, sometimes I need to restart it. Because, like I said, you can get a completely different effect that you weren't looking for, and it was worse, so I had to restart it. So anyway, the point is, if you restart the video, nobody will know. Because it's just a video, you won't release both of them, so just release the one that's better. And nobody will know how many times you tried it, and just say it was a good tutorial. Okay, the next biggest thing that you heard of in the two videos was the sound quality. Now back then, I think that was in 2007, it wasn't too horribly bad, but going from today and looking back, it's a horrible sound quality. I didn't have the money I have now for the very expensive microphone that I bought, but you can clearly tell a difference. It sounds amazing. So, in the paddles tutorial, I had a simple headset, just like a headphones, and then it had a detachable microphone, just a little itty bitty microphone that had a little protective covering over the microphone, and then I would just move that over my mouth and then talk. And it did not sound that good, as you could tell, so I upgraded that twice. I went from that to the Samsung C03U condenser microphone, and that's Samsung as in S-O-N, not S-U-N-G. So not the same people that make the TVs. It's Samsung, S-O-N, and they make a pretty good microphone. It was $150 at the time. I think it's down to $100 now. But if you need a good condenser microphone, it comes with a nice stand, and then you can move that somewhere. And then I upgraded that to the Rode Podcaster, which is rated one of the best USB microphones available. I didn't want to get the Audio Enthusiast actual microphone where I have to get like a mixer and all that stuff. So, looking for the best USB microphone, I could just plug it in and record. That's all I was looking for. So, if the first recommendation is good, you are rehearsing, you are releasing not so monotone tutorials, I don't think the audio quality matters unless it's really bad. So you can use the microphone that I used. It might sound a little bit bad, but for your content is what matters. I think it'll be fine. So those are the two biggest tips that I can recommend, is to actually rehearse, don't speak in monotone voice, and sound quality. That takes second priority to the first one. Alright, so let me discuss a little bit about programs. So, what I've used to record since the beginning of time is Camtasia Studio. This program is simply, I think, one of the best screen recorders available. However, it does have a few issues with it when you are recording. And that leads me to the third tip. Don't pause and start countless times in your tutorials. Don't click the pause and resume button. I'm just pressing it a few times because I'll show you why. Alright, hopefully this will work. Let me go ahead and type something. This is why you do not pause. Now, you can pause 2 or 3 times, and I have a pretty fast computer, but when you pause and start recording again, you start to get a little bit of a delay to when you type and the sound.
So you can hear my keyboard typing in the videos. But I pressed that letter 3 seconds ago. So there becomes a point where it becomes so messed up. If you see my Advanced Techniques series, you will know a few tutorials. I even had to mention it in the very beginning of a few tutorials. I said this video is out of sync. I apologize. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial anyway. I tried to fix it, but it was just so out of sync that I just could not get it fixed. And it was like a 50-minute tutorial, so I did not want to repeat it. So if you use Camtasia Studio, and I think it's a Windows 7 issue with the transparency. I did try it without the transparency, but it still did it. I tried it with the Windows 7 Basic on, so not even arrow was enabled, and it still did it. So I'm not exactly sure what's causing it. But even in my really expensive computer, it's doing it, so it's not depending on your computer power. Now, if you're like me and you sometimes mess up a lot, you say the wrong word, or you just mistype something and you don't want that in your video, I sometimes do pause and start over. Pause and resume. But when it gets to I'm doing it 5 times, I'll simply stop the recording and then create a new recording to go with it. So I split the recordings. So if you want to take this a step further, you can record in blocks. Record 5 minutes, stop, create a new recording of 5 minutes, stop, create another 5-minute recording, and combine them all together. Because the longer you go on, and the more times you pause and resume, the more out of sync the audio and video become. So I did it a few more times. And I can't type in most of my videos, so that will lead me to the next tip, which is my newest tutorials. Some of mine, most of mine, have the code completely finished. Now, there are 2 reasons behind that. One of the reasons was because, obviously, most of the time I have trouble typing because I have something in front of me to drink when my mouth gets dry. Sometimes I do a few tutorials in bulk, and I just need to take a drink of something, and I don't want to go somewhere else to get it, so I just have it right in front of me, and obviously with that in front of me, I have trouble typing, getting to the letters, and I type something else, and then I have to go back and fix it. Even when it's not in front of me, sometimes I just have one of those days where I can't type. The second reason is to actually focus on the why you're doing this, not the how you're doing this kind of thing. If you take a look at my A-star tutorial and my collision detection, 2D collision detection, if you take a look at those 2 tutorials, you will see the benefits of having the code completely finished. Let's take the A-star tutorial. It was a 50-minute tutorial. The code was finished. What did I spend with that 50-minute time? I talked about the algorithm twice, trying to get the message across 2 different ways. I discussed that in the video in great detail, how the algorithm works, not this is how you write it, and write my words exactly like you see here, and you'll have a decent A-star algorithm. So I actually discussed the algorithm, what it does, how it works, and why it does what it does. And I did that 2 different ways. So the more detailed you get in your tutorials, sometimes you will have to have a visual overlay, like in the 2D collision detection, or a kind of a visual representation on what you're talking about. In the middle of my A-star tutorial, I wrote a few pieces of paper. I wrote on a few pieces of paper, and I actually did the algorithm on paper. I scanned that paper in and put it as a image, and I just showed that image up in the video. And I discussed what it was what was written on the paper and how the algorithm works step by step on that paper. So that's the next step, tip of whatever you want to call it, is to have a decent discussion on a complex topic. Not just copy my words, whatever I type exactly letter for letter, and this is how it will be. I've seen lots of tutorials that do that. Just tell you, here's the code. Here, put this in. A lot of books do it too. Here's the code. No explanation as to why. Or if they do have an explanation, it's like a little itty bitty 5-line paragraph of what this does. Okay, next step. We're going to talk about editing. And I left that giant pause in there because I'm going to demonstrate something. So that long pause was intentional. So the next tutorial, I'm going to talk about editing. I'm going to actually save this video and go in and edit it. Now, I don't need to have a perfect video. I can go in and edit some of the things, and we can release that video. Back to the very first thing I recommended was rehearsing and getting in that tutorial mindset, rehearsing several times before the actual tutorial video, what you will release. You could still have a few issues, like you will have long pause, you need to think of something. Oh, what's that After Effects effect that I was going to use? I did it 3 times before. Oh, that's it. So, if you want to get rid of that little block of brain fart, you can actually edit it, not just, oh, now I need to redo the whole tutorial over again. So let me end this tutorial, and we'll go into the next tutorial, which is editing your tutorials. I'll see you next time.